Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship HMS Behemoth. Its mission? To explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Sounds great, right? If you are even remotely a fan of sci-fi and Star Trek, in particular, this game is for you. In today's episode, we are going to pick up rules hack number 6 for Goblin Quest the RPG, Space Interns. You signed up for your internship anticipating adventure, exploration, and excitement. You're also an expendable underling who will likely never complete this internship alive. Welcome to Claim to Game, the podcast helping busy people master tabletop role-playing games, one game at a time. I'm Clint.scheirer. I've been an educator for over 12 years and have helped gamers of all levels quickly grasp tabletop RPGs so they can enjoy playing them to the fullest. Stay tuned so you can make your claim to game. Hello and welcome back to episode 22, season 1 of Claim to Game, a predominantly educational fun podcast in which I am daring to coin the word funjucational. It's like discovering a new species of jaguars in the Amazon rainforest, only to further discover that you can communicate with them through telepathy. The game for this season is Goblin Quest the RPG, brought to you by game designer Grant Howitt, whose works include but are not limited to Honey Heist, Die the RPG, Spire, Unbound, One Last Job, Heart, Eat the Reich, and now, at the time of this episode, release a new tabletop RPG, Hollows, fully funded on BackerKit. Our running definition of a rules hack for Goblin Quest is a series of tweaks and twists to the main game which allow you to use it to tell different stories. The 6th of these hacks to appear in the Goblin Quest RPG book on page 106, earned through the Kickstarter stretch goals in 2014, is Space Interns. Since the age of 13, I have, without a doubt, considered myself a Trekkie. And I'm about to say something very controversial. I like Star Trek more than Star Wars. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Star Wars. I just like Star Trek a little bit better. And now that I just alienated all of you who are Star Wars fans, see what I did there? Please give me a moment to explain before you write off this podcast vowing never to return. Think to yourself, WWBYD, what would Baby Yoda do? Baby Yoda would stay, bro, so listen up. For Christmas, the year I would have officially become a man in a different culture, I received 3 presents, each containing a box DVD set. They contain the original series of Star Trek, which only aired for a total of 3 seasons from 1966 to 1969. The first season box was yellow, and it was the same color as the Federation-issued uniform worn by Captain James T. Kirk, played by William Shatner. The second box was blue and matched the uniform worn by the First Officer Spock, played by actor Leonard Nimoy, and Chief Medical Officer Leonard Bones McCoy, played by actor DeForest Kelley. The third and final season box was red, and it matched the uniform color worn by Lieutenant Uhura, played by actress Nichelle Nichols, as well as Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott, or Scotty, as he was better known, played by actor James Doohan. I watched these DVDs on repeat for the remainder of my adolescence. The crew of the Starship Enterprise became my friends. I marveled at the creative worlds and stories written and produced by Gene Roddenberry. His natural interest in science as well as aeronautical engineering gave me a sense of verisimilitude, believability in the world he made. I felt like with time, this world could actually exist in the future, and I so wanted to be a part of it. What I did not want to be a part of was the less well-known characters in the Star Trek episodes. Though the main characters, some of whom I mentioned, always seemed to escape danger and get back to the ship okay on each episode, the supporting, less tenured characters were constantly dying. And if they were the unfortunate crew members to be chosen for the landing party, it was almost certainly a death sentence. Now, there has been an interesting observation from viewers of the original Star Trek series, an observation that has invaded many an internet meme, forums, and common superfan jokes throughout the years. The Star Trek crew members wearing the red uniforms, known as the red shirts, die more than the other characters. This is the belief. Now, in the original series, there has been counted to be 55 total deaths. 24 of those were crew members wearing red shirts, while 9 had the yellow gold uniform, 7 were wearing blue, and there were 15 unidentifiable crew members that had colors that we couldn't determine. So roughly 43% of the deaths were red shirts. Now, this shouldn't equate to the observation that red shirts always die, but with those crew members taking up a majority of the deaths, it's easy to see why this phenomena took hold in the minds of Trekkies. So if you were able to hang with me through all that, you may also be a Star Trek fan. The Star Wars fans may have stopped listening a couple of minutes ago, but regardless of your preference, sci-fi fans should try this game. It plays off the red shirts always die phenomena. Instead of frequently dying crew members being those who adorn a specific color uniform, however, grant how it changed it to crew members who are interns always die. An intern is a trainee or student who often may work without pay in order to gain experience in a specific profession. And due to the intern's inexperience and the learning curve when learning any new skill or position, there are often jokes floating around the internet regarding an intern as being incompetent or expendable for a company since they aren't a quote-unquote real employee. Now, the truth bomb here is that we should treat people like human beings with purpose, worth, and dignity, regardless of their status within our place of employment. But all this aside, this game plays with that stereotype. Much like the original Goblin Quest game sees the goblins as expendable cannon fodder to be thrown at the enemy. So I'm going to read straight out of the book prompt so that you get an idea for how this game is going to run. Congratulations, you've been slaving away on the research ship HMS Behemoth for months, maybe years now, but you've finally made it to the orbit of an exotic alien world. Not only that, but you've been chosen to make planetfall and speak to the natives. What an exciting time to be alive. You walk into the teleporter room and grin at your supervisor, who doesn't look as happy about it as you are, and he outfits you with your communicator and phaser pistol. Don't worry, sir, you say with enthusiasm only an unpaid part-time intern can muster. If things go wrong, they can always beam us right back up, right? Can't they? Your supervisor, unbeknownst to you, thinks about how expensive it is to run the teleporters and how far off budget the ship was last quarter. He smiles at you and says, "Yeah, sure, kid, sure. Gosh, what an adventure!" Now, there is a hilarious disclaimer for anyone signing up for the space internship program on the HMS Behemoth funded by the Explorer Corporation. I won't read this aloud since this podcast is not an audiobook. My final thoughts before getting into how to prep play is that due to the exploratory and improvisational nature of this hack, it's suggested you play this game with a game master. It will be nice to have someone in the captain's chair for this. All right, here we go. Make it so, number one. Oh, wait, whoops. There isn't a number one. There isn't a first officer of the HMS Behemoth yet because you and your players will need to make your characters. And making a crew begins with viewing the table at the top of page 108. Each player will play 5 different crew members. All 5 crew members will have their own ranks, and that number is a value of where they fall in superiority and expertise. So the number is called the expertise value. The first crew member is the supervisor, and their expertise is 4. The second crew member is the permanent intern, and their expertise is 3. The third crew member is the intern, just regular intern, expertise of 2. The fourth crew member is a sub-intern, and their expertise is 1. And then you have the part-time intern, and their expertise is 0. They are basically a walking vegetable. Each character will get a name and a personality quirk, and the quirk can be a personality trait, a physical trait, or maybe some type of alien characteristic since we are in space after all. When a player attempts to take an action within the story, if they use their personality quirk, they are able to gain an extra 1d6. That's a 6-sided dice to add to their dice pool when they roll. And the player also gets to determine what color uniforms the team is wearing, and it definitely does not have to be red. Next comes the specialty, and each team will have their own unique specialty, which all 5 of the players' characters specialize in, to varying degrees of expertise, as we mentioned before. And once per character, you can establish a useful story fact using your specialty. The specialty also gives your character a suitable piece of equipment that someone with that specialty would have or would be carrying. If a player decides to use their specialty equipment during their turn when taking an action, they gain 1d6 or an extra 6-sided dice to their dice pool when they roll. Page 108 has a table at the bottom with 4 specialties, and the quickest way to get playing is just to use the specialties on this table instead of making up different ones for yourself. You could choose by rolling 1d4, but here are the given specialties. Number 1 is security. Think Tasha Yar, the security officer from the Next Generation series in the 90s. This means that your team will be all about weapons, combat, tactics, and the given specialty equipment is grenades. Number 2 is the diplomat. Try to emulate Spock's father, Sarek, who was a diplomat ambassador for the Vulcans, Spock's race, to the United Federation of Planets. Your team will be good with culture, psychology, and speaking. The given specialty equipment is a holographic projector, and for you Star Wars fans, this is the equivalent of Princess Leia through holographic projection saying, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." Number 3 is scientific. So this specialty, obviously I think of Spock, is the first science officer who comes to my mind, but I'm sure there are others. And for the true Trekkies out there, you're already listing them in chronological order right now. Your team will be good with flora, fauna, weather, biology, and the periodic table. The given specialty equipment is a hand scanner. And what does this hand scanner scan? Everything, with surprising accurate data no matter what you're actually scanning. That is, of course, depending on the success of your dice rolls. And the 4th and final specialty is engineering. Some avatars for inspiration include Scotty, Geordie LaForge, played by actor LeVar Burton, or maybe Miles O'Brady, played by actor Colm Meaney. Your team will be good with machines, tech, architecture, infrastructure, and anything an engineer would do. The specialty item is a multi-tool, the equivalent of the Sci-Fi Swiss Army knife, but it packs a bigger punch to get shit done. Besides your team's specialty equipment, everyone is given 2 items which are very iconic to the Star Trek franchise. Neither of these items gives you an additional dice to roll during your action, but they do add extra flavor for this Star Trek-esque setting. First, you get a communicator, and this is basically a cell phone allowing you to communicate with other members of your team when they aren't directly next to you within talking distance. Unless you're playing the supervisor character on your team, your communicator is unable to reach back to the HMS Behemoth in orbit. Supervisor communicators must have been given an extra boosted data plan from the phaser company because their communicators can communicate back to the ship in both audio and video transmission. Second, you get a phaser, which is basically like a laser gun, and it can only be set to 2 different modes, stun or kill. You can't kind of stun, you can't kind of kill. Phasers slap you right into that black or white moral dilemma. Do I preserve this enemy, but immobilize them, or do I disintegrate them into oblivion to save my own skin? Typically in Star Trek, phasers are usually kept on stun and only turned to kill in extreme, necessary, dire circumstances. Now, what constitutes as a extreme, necessary, dire circumstance in this game? Well, that's up to you. Quick pause in the episode. Have you felt like life is too crazy busy, that the tabletop RPG games you've always wanted to learn and play are passing you by? The Claim to Game podcast has one mission: helping busy people master tabletop role-playing games one game at a time. If you have liked what you've heard today, can you help me spread the good word? Leave the show a 5-star review, thumbs up, positive comment, or written review wherever you listen to podcasts. You could also leave a review directly on the claimtogamepodcast.com website. Your review helps grow the show and helps others learn new tabletop role-playing games. So please, after you finish, rate and review the show. Thank you. Now back to the episode. The Explorer Corporation is pretty corrupt and heartless in my opinion, but here is the order of importance as far as the preservation of life of these crew members go. First, the supervisors usually stand around at the teleport site down on the planet, giving the orders and staying in relative safety until they absolutely have to put themselves in harm's way. They will first send all of their interns into the unknown of the dangerous mission, and players will start at the bottom using the intern with the least amount of experience first to try their chances of success, because this makes sense, right? And once the interns are gone, once they've all died off, then and only then will the supervisor get involved. Now, I have to make an aside here. So, this makes me think of a Robot Chicken episode where Seth Green and crew were making fun of the United States' late entry into World War II. It portrayed Adolf Hitler, representing the country of Germany and the Nazi regime, as a student in a classroom with other students, all of who were sitting at their own desks, each of them representing their own country or world power. And slowly, little Hitler kept acquiring the desks of all the other students who mysteriously disappeared. He would be like, "My teacher? I will need the Polish voice desk as well." Finally, at the end, the desk of the United States was the only one left, along with little Hitler's massive desks all around him from the countries he'd stolen. The U.S. student, when asked by the teacher, "What's going on?" said, "It's not my problem." And then immediately after saying that, a Japanese student came in and knocked over the fast food the U.S. boy was enjoying. Then, and only then, did the U.S. boy sigh and say, "Now it's my problem." This is the supervisor in the game of Space Interns. You are the US and you stay out until the last possible second. I'll include the link in the show notes if you want to experience the Robot Chicken segment for yourself. Players will be sending out their lowest skilled intern first, and their intern will likely have to communicate back to the supervisor. So for some people at your table, this might not feel very comfortable having to switch back and forth talking to themselves, and no problem. An alternative rule you could adapt to is to assign each player the role of being the supervisor of another person's team, so that way they can talk to a different individual when they are responding back to their supervisor. This splits up the role play so it doesn't sound like Gollum from The Lord of the Rings talking to himself. And what happens if all the active interns die in a specific scene while they are away from the rest of the party at the landing site? Well, you could do a few things. You could use some hand waving and just send another intern running into the situation. Or, and this would be my choice, have the scene end and wrap up the utter failure of the situation into the overall storyline. How would this look? Well, maybe you're playing a game with a total of 4 players. You land on the planet. Each player starts the scene sending out an intern from their team to go explore. Some crazy creature destroys all 4 of the interns that were out exploring. Narratively, I would have the communication go dead, the supervisors become annoyed at the incompetence and the expense of finding good interns these days, and then they send out the next group of interns. However, this is up to you, and you could easily have a supervisor say to the next intern, "I think they need some help out there, kid. Can you go and help them? Yeah?" Do whatever feels the most fun and keeps things going. During the game, when a player wishes to invoke their team's specialty during their turn, a fun and unique game mechanic is activated. First, the player will write on an index card a fact that they've learned about the planet or their situation, which they would only know because of their unique specialty. They will then place that index card on the table and put a number of 6-sided dice on that card that is equal to their current active character's expertise. Any other player, when it's their turn, can take one of those dice off of the index card to add to their dice pool as long as they incorporate the fact that was created into what their character is attempting to do. An example, Chuck, a member of the security team landing party, establishes the fact that the hostile bear-like humanoids that are lumbering towards them have left their rear position wide exposed. The player who is playing Chuck writes this down as a fact on the card for other players, or himself, to take advantage of. Chuck is a permanent intern. He's survived this gig longer than most, and his expertise is 3. So the player then places 3 6-sided dice on the index card to be utilized in future rolls by other players. Those of you who have good attention to detail may already be asking yourself, what about those part-time interns? They have an expertise of 0. How many dice do they get to put down on their index card? Well, the answer is they don't. They are so green, so new, they are not even allowed to use their specialty in fear of hurting themselves and others. Remember, they are basically a walking vegetable. Here's some caveats. A specialty fact can only be used and created once per character. A player is not allowed to take more than 1 dice at a time from the index card, and players cannot undo facts made by other players. An example, another player cannot write down on their index card, "The bear-like creature's rear is actually guarded after all." You got to respect the established reality given by the other players. In improv, this is called finding and playing the game of the scene. To reject this stops the story, stops the momentum, and sometimes stops the fun. I will probably forever mention what my friend Robin D. Laws said in episode 16. He said, it's called keeping your eye on the ball and picking up the ball when it's handed to you. Don't be selfish. Now it's time for some GM prepping. Prepping this game is almost as fun as playing it. First stop is to create the planet the boarding party will be beaming down to. On page 110 in the rulebook, it has a comprehensive roll table where you'll be rolling 6-sided dice 4 times to establish most of what the players will be experiencing during the gameplay. I'll go ahead and tell you what I rolled as I went through this section. Section 1 is the terrain. I rolled a 5, which determined my planet is an urban, city-like populated planet. Star Wars fans, if you're still with me, trying to give you some lovin', think Coruscant. Section 2 is one weird thing. I rolled a 6. Our planet experiences days and nights, which can last for weeks each cycle around the nearest sun. Section 3 is the aliens here are, and I rolled a number 4. These aliens are graceful, yet cruel. And I'm reminded of Spinning Silver, a great fantasy novel by Naomi Novik, where the timeless and beautiful Elven King is beautiful, yet merciless in his actions. And finally, Section 4 is the biggest issue with any planet you're landing on other than your own, the atmosphere. Can you or can you not breathe without a spacesuit or a helmet? I luckily rolled a 1, which put our planet in the breathable category. Whew, we can all take a deep breath without having our lungs explode or dying due to toxic gaseous asphyxiation. On to the mission. What is the rub? What is the beef? What are we trying to accomplish, acquire, or do exactly? As the GM, it's up for you to decide what is happening during your session, and we'll cover one of Grant's adventure option prompts on page 112 in just a minute. However, the mission, if you can imagine me saying that with bold letters scrolling in front of your face, is to boldly go where no man has gone before, with the following corporate directives guiding your crew's actions, and here they are. The primary directive: defend democracy against insurrection, war, terrorism, and restricted freedom. The secondary directive: engage in diplomacy first, good for public relations. And the tertiary or third directive: always use acceptable, air quotes, force. Ha! Whatever that means. Sounds pretty arbitrary and open to interpretation. Set phasers to kill. The captain of the HMS Behemoth will give a short mission debriefing before planetfall. With what we know so far about this corporation, by how they treat their interns, imagine a cagey, dodgy, corrupt dude with a huge mustache and a cigar hanging out of his mouth, half distracted, telling the landing crew to do their best, and they may one day be paid employees like their supervisors, who, by the way, are also severely underpaid. This game will follow the 3-act structure shown in the original rules of Goblin Quest, but the tasks are now actually called acts. The theme of each act is pretty set in place, so here's how it goes. Act 1, spread out to find out what's happening on the planet. And then you play through the 3 scenes where players are rolling dice to get enough victories to move on to the next scene. The second act is, now that the problem is clear, prepare for action. And how do you plan to solve the problem? You go through the 3 scenes, getting victories to move on to the next scenes. And then lastly, you finish up with Act 3. You enact the solution to restore balance, control, and hopefully come home alive, or at least some of you. And it is suggested that in Act 3, a curveball, much like the misfortune mechanic in the original Goblin Quest rules, tries to prevent you from achieving your mission. And you can use the misfortune rules on page 32 to increase the appropriate scene's difficulty rating to make the players work for their success. If the players are able to get through all 3 scenes in all 3 acts, then the extraction from the planet is pretty simple and kind of anticlimactic, so feel free to jazz it up. Basically, the captain will unceremoniously show up, take all the credit for what you did, and then you'll beam back up to the HMS Behemoth. That's if you're not already dead. Now, you could just play the game like that, as is, or you can invoke the special Nuke It From Orbit rule. And if you choose to accept this huge responsibility, you'll be adding an extra option for each team's supervisor to consider in a time of crisis. Nuke stands for Neo Uranium Kinetic Energy Burst. And if all the supervisors agree, once per game, a nuke burst can be dropped once per session anywhere the characters can see with their eyes. And this only happens if all the supervisors agree to drop the nuke. To prevent the misuse of the nuke, it can only be deployed perilously close to the interns and employees. Once dropped, all characters in action use the table on page 112, the nuke table, to resolve their actions and their dice roll results instead of the normal table that they use on page 42 in the main Goblin Quest rule set. Now, the normal table on page 42 has rolling occur like this, and you should know this by now if you've played all these different hacks and also the main game. Rolling a 1 or 2 on your dice results in an injury to your character. Rolling a 3, something bad will happen, but no injury. It's just story flavor. Rolling a 4, something good happens, and once again, no victory, just story flavor. And then lastly, if you roll a 5 or a 6, that is a victory. And truth be told, this gives the player a 36% chance of either injury or victory, 16% chance of something bad happening when they roll a die, and 16% chance of something good happening. What happens mechanically when the nuke is dropped? Well, on page 112, the table changes to this. It raises the stakes. Rolling a 1 is instant death of the intern. Rolling a 2 or a 3 results in an injury. Rolling a 4 or a 5 gives a victory. And rolling a 6 is an astounding victory, which really counts as 2 victories. So the new probability is that now there's a 50% chance the characters will either die instantly or injure themselves, rolling a 1, 2, or 3, and a 50% chance of characters getting a victory or extra super victories by rolling a 4, 5, and 6. Greater chance to succeed, but just as great of a chance to fail. Not quite the Kobayashi Maru, but halfway there, my friends. And if you didn't get that term, go watch the 1982 film, The Wrath of Khan. You'll thank me for it later. On page 112, Grant Howitt himself, not a guest game designer, Grant Howitt himself provides 6 optional sample missions you can base your gameplay around. You can roll a 1d6 to determine which one you and your players will enjoy, or choose your favorite. My favorite one is the big game, and here it is. The planetary governor is dead, killed on a hunting expedition. It's up to you to investigate the case, then find out who did it, who done it, and deal with them appropriately. You've got a Holovid crew with you as well, working to document your mission for a training video for new interns. Great. Good luck. The twist provided for Act 3 is as follows. The governor is not actually dead. He faked his whole death. Why? And what are you going to do with all these suspects? Are they innocent, or are they all in on it? To wrap this all up, regardless of whether you are in the camp of Star Trek, Camp Star Wars, both, or just frickin' love sci-fi, this hack will truly give you an opportunity to live long and prosper. Well, you will, not so much your interns. Join us next time as we continue our quest, claiming Goblin Quest. With 6 rules hacks down, we've got just 1 more hack to go. Our final hack is not even really a Goblin Quest hack. Regency Ladies was giving Grant Howitt trouble trying to fit into the core mechanics of the Goblin Quest rules. And so he said, screw it, I'll make a new game. And this game is your chance to live out your wildest Pride and Prejudice moments. Search for true love, marriage, attend a ball, but please, for the love of all that is good, keep it PG rated. Thank you. Have you been listening to the first season of the CTG and do not yet have your very own copy of Goblin Quest the RPG? Picture yourself pretending to be gross, grotty little buggers on your next game night with your closest friends. Laughs, goofs, and goblins. Don't wait. Click on the link in the show notes. Don't like goblins? Enjoy 7 different Goblin Quest setting hacks in the back of the core rulebook. It's almost like getting 8 games for the price of 1. Enjoy your copy of Goblin Quest the RPG today. And until the next time we make our claim to game, 1 game at a time.